When the ambulance gets here, we're going to go ahead and give them all the ketamine.
It struck me that the paramedics were charged with more crimes.
The two Aurora Fire paramedics who made the decision to inject Elijah McClain with ketamine that night 2 years ago were each charged with 11 counts in this indictment. Both Jeremy Cooper and Peter Chikuniak face manslaughter and criminal negligent homicide, just like the officers. But they also each were charged with 3 separate counts of second-degree assault and 2 counts of crimes of violence for each of those assault charges.
That points to something that happens in a lot of cases where the one action, which is administering the ketamine, satisfies the definition of 3 different parts of the assault section of the statute.
DU law professor Ian Farrell says he can't think of another case where paramedics or EMTs were charged criminally for their actions during a call like this. Plenty have been charged for not doing enough to help someone, though this is rare.
The goal of this, I imagine, from a sort of policy perspective, would be not to make paramedics nervous, but to, I guess, alter or inform the relationship between paramedics and police officers.
Farrell says the argument prosecutors will attempt to make about the paramedics boils down to 2 things. First, the dose of ketamine they chose to administer was too much for McClain's body weight, which the paramedics never really determined. And second,
the argument of the government will be they appear not to have invoked or used their own independent medical judgment as to whether or not ketamine was appropriate, and instead simply deferred to what the police officers asked and or told them to do.
Now, the 2 big charges against the 3 police officers and these 2 paramedics are manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. In order to prove manslaughter, Farrell says prosecutors will have to prove each defendant was aware that what they were doing had a substantial risk of causing death. For the criminally negligent homicide charge, you don't have to prove that they knew the risk. You only have to prove that a reasonable person would understand that risk, Anusha.
And we heard this throughout the day, including from the Attorney General, that this is going to be a tough case to prosecute.
The Attorney General said that. You got to think back to the original case here, when the DA looked at the autopsy in this case, didn't feel that there was enough to charge this case against the police officers and the paramedics at the time. You got to think the defense will try to use that in their argument as this goes to trial.